in a small lost town surrounded by dense forests. There was a gloomy atmosphere and mysteries that seemed impossible to solve. Locals talked about the terrible events that took place at night, when the moon rose over the dark sky. It was on these nights, when the stars dimmed and the wind swept through the trees, that forces awakened in the depths of the forest that could not be explained by a rational mind. Legends spoke of sinister werewolves, creatures passing from the human world to the world of animal malice. The inhabitants of the town told how, on a full moon, the shadows of the forest were filled with dark forces, and strange howls of wolves could be heard on the roads, merging with human moans. One day, a mysterious traveler named Adrian came to this town. With dark eyes and a taciturn personality, he quickly attracted the attention of the locals. Adrian rented an old house on the edge of town, immersed in the shadow of the forest, and the locals began to suspect that he had chosen this particular place for a reason. The first victim was an old newlywed couple who went for a walk in the woods on a full moon. Their screams tore through the night, but no one could determine what had befallen them. Only the smell of blood and the abyss of footprints in the dark testified to a terrible incident. Adrian watched the city from the shadow of his house, and his eyes sparkled like cold fires. He knew that the time had come to give this city an exceptional destiny. Not long after, on the full moon, the children began to disappear one by one. The howls of wolves were getting closer, and ghostly shadows were gathering on the clouds, like a harbinger of disaster. In a panic, the townspeople turned to the local priest, trying to find answers to the mysterious disappearances. The elders of the village remembered an ancient legend about how once, in ancient times, the locals made a deal with the dark forces, and now it's time to pay off. According to legend, only those who can pass through the trial of the great werewolf will be able to free the city from the curse. There was still hope for a hero capable of defeating evil, and the eyes of the city quickly turned to Adrian. He agreed to accept the challenge and went into the forest, into the dark depths where even the moon was afraid to penetrate. Meanwhile, the disappearances continued in the city, but this time something changed. The nights became longer and darker, and the winds of the forest whispered the names of those who were looking for a solution to the riddle. Every night Adrian felt the dark forces of the forest trying to capture his soul, but he persevered on his way. One day, when the moon rose high into the sky, Adrian found himself in front of a formidable inhabited werewolf. A huge creature with eyes sparkling with dark malice stood in front of him. The battle between man and werewolf unfolded in these dark depths, and the moans of the night merged with the howling of wolves. After many hours of fighting, Adrian was able to defeat the werewolf, but instead of joy, he was overcome by a strange feeling. That evil entity left the werewolf's body and disappeared into the dark corners of the forest. But now Adrian realized that he himself had become part of the curse. When he returned to the city, he told about his victory, but in his eyes there was a fire of that light that no longer existed in his soul. The townspeople were freed from anger, but they noticed that the nights were still dark, and the winds of the forest now carried only sad whispers. Adrian's story is not over. He stayed in the city, hiding dark secrets and mysterious forces in his soul. What does the future hold for this small town? Perhaps wolves will howl again in the night, and the fate of Adrian and the city will become even more gloomy and mysterious. A few months after the battle with the werewolf, the city noticed changes that seemed unrelated to previous events. Adrian became a shadow image of himself, avoiding the public, as if his soul had flown away with the sinister werewolf into the night. However, something strange began to happen in the depths of the forest. Locals said that the night shadows became more mobile, and the winds of the forest carried mysterious whispers. The animals became extremely aggressive, and the night sounds pierced the silence, as if something was hiding in the darkness. Adrian, although he avoided contact with others, but there was longing and secret pain in his eyes. He suspected that the curse had not disappeared, but had only taken a different form. The city began to shake from the strange disappearances that left no trace. Residents felt the ghost of an unknown horror that had repopulated their small town. On the night when the moon rose into the sky, Adrian woke up from the nightmares that plagued his dreams. He headed into the dark woods, where the curse began its sinister reincarnation. Step by step, he moved deeper, feeling that dark forces were once again reaching out to his soul, carrying mysterious secrets. Meanwhile, in the city, where people began to forget about the terrible events, the night of the full moon came. At that moment, an unknown evil awakened inside the forest, and the night was enveloped in an ominous aura. The beasts in the forest began to fight among themselves, and the winds brought the sounds of mysterious whispers, as if souls forgotten by time were reaching for the surface. A dark silhouette of a werewolf, embodied from the most terrible nightmares, passed through the forest wilds. The curse that had intervened in the life of the city took on a new, more terrifying form. The residents were immersed in excitement and anxiety, feeling that something ominous was approaching. But at the very center of this nightmare was Adrian, immersed in a struggle with forces that had long since lost their shape. He understood that in order to save the city and his own soul, he would have to face something that even the darkest corners of his past could not foresee. The secrets of the forest were embodied in an essence that could not be described in words, and only Adrian could unravel the dark secrets of his fate. The fate of the city now depended on its ability to cope with new threats that intertwined with the past like invisible threads in a web. Thus began a new chapter in the history of this small town, where the shadows of the forest became part of an ominous scenario written by fate itself. And only time will tell what fears and secrets will be revealed, and what price those who decide to resist the darkness that penetrates their world will have to pay. Under the arches of the dark forest, Adrian fought with the unknown, fighting for his salvation and the salvation of the city. The moon looked helplessly at this battle, in which darkness fought with an even darker one. The residents of the city felt that something more than just a curse was awakening in their midst. With every step, with every wave of Adrian's hand, the sinister shadow of the werewolf seemed more real. However, the more he resisted, the more vividly the memories of the past flashed, of the darkness that had once been a part of himself. At that moment, when the night became so dark that it seemed as if the whole city was swallowed up in darkness, something unexpected happened. The shadows of the forest began to distort, intertwining into an intricate pattern that resembled ancient symbols and signs. A thick haze rose, forming vortices, as if becoming a portal to another dimension. Adrian, exhausted and desiccated, stared at this strange landscape. Then, at the very moment when his power was almost exhausted, ghosts began to appear from the dark gate. The shadows of the past, whose souls had once been consumed by darkness, began to come to light. These ghosts, like revived memories, began to surround Adrian. At first he was afraid, but then he realized that these souls were the key to the solution. Each ghost carried a piece of history, forgotten by time, which could change the fate of the city. Along with the ghosts, whispers began to sound in the vortex, words and warnings. Voices from the past told Adrian how to break the curse that had gripped them all. But the price was high, and he knew he had to make a choice that would determine the future. The dark gate began to slowly close, but a trace of a mysterious event remained in the city. The inhabitants still felt that the air was saturated with magic, and the night sounds had died away, leaving behind a silence full of expectation. Adrian stood on the edge between light and darkness, and the secrets of his past were revealed like the leaves of a book written by unknown forces. He knew that the city would have to go through another chapter of its fate, and the only question was what price it would have to pay to get rid of the darkness that had already become part of every street and alley. Adrian's dark eyes sparkled from the depths of his soul, and in their reflection the shadows of the past and the darkness of the future flickered. And now, when the night witnessed the struggle of light and darkness, only a mystery remained in the city, waiting for its unraveler. In the last moments of the night, as the stars began to fade before dawn, Adrian made a decision that would determine the fate of the city. He stood in the middle of a forest surrounded by ghosts of the past and raised his hand to open the gate between the worlds again. The ghosts, as if dancing for the last time, radiated light, illuminating the night. Adrian, closing his eyes, felt the souls of the past caressing his face, as if blessing him on the way to redemption. The vortex slowly faded away, and the dark gate disappeared, leaving behind only a cool wind. The forces that had once engulfed the city were gradually fading away, like a fog dissipating before the light of morning. Adrian remained standing in the dark forest, but now his eyes sparkled with light, not darkness. He felt the weight of the past lifting from his shoulders, and a new, gentle view of the world sounded in his heart. The morning lit up the city with fresh rays of the sun, as if restoring life after a terrible nightmare. Residents, waking up from a dark dream, felt that something had changed around them. The shadow that had enveloped them for a long time gave way to light, and every breath became full of relief. Adrian returned to the city, and his presence, previously shrouded in mystical mystery, became a source of hope and inspiration. The residents of the city, seeing the sparkle of kindness in his eyes, knew that their hero had brought not only salvation to the city, but also a new chapter in its history. The city began to recover. The streets were filled with laughter, and the houses were filled with warmth and light. All those who remained alive after the dark events found the strength to live anew, appreciating every moment of their lives. The townspeople strengthened their unity, knowing that the strength of their community can overcome any difficulties. Adrian became a part of this renovated city, bearing the traces of the past, but looking to the future. He became a good light for those who were lost in the darkness, and their hope that even after the darkest times, a bright morning could come. The history of the city has become a legend, told from generation to generation. The shadows of the forest, although they remained in the past, were never forgotten, reminding that the power of good can awaken even in the darkest corners. The city flourished, being dragged by time, and everyone who met that evening under the starlight knew that even in the dark, if you look closely, you can see the bright rays of hope.